Hello and welcome back to part 5 in my algorithms video tutorial series. In this one we're going to be covering using CSV files so we can do the analysis of our algorithms and be able to print out some nice pretty graphs so that we can actually explain those graphs so we can show our understanding of how efficient the algorithms are and how they work. We're going to keep this really simple. So we've got all of our utilities ready, but in this one, we're just going to concentrate on the one thing, which is getting the CSV files working. You'll be able to find more information about CSV as part of the Python library, just inside. If you go to docs.python.org and search for CSV, you'll see that there's an actual module called CSV that allows us to create readers or writers, and then we can actually read and write rows into that CSV. It seems a little complicated, so I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible and show you the example so that we can get just what we need from it. So there's a fair amount to cover, so I'm just going to keep this as simple as possible and build it up from nothing. So I'm going to get rid of everything. We're not going to use our utilities just yet. We're just going to tackle the first problem, which is opening a file. So I'm just going to give my name a file, so I'll call it F, and I'll use the open command. You can see heaps of information comes up in the help on the right-hand side here about open. The key thing is that we need to open it for writing to that file, and there's also a thing about new line, which we need to use a specific version for the new line. So the first thing that this needs is we need to give it a file name. So I'm going to call mine test.csv. If I give it the extension CSV, then it means that it's going to be able to be opened up in Excel, and it'll work to be able to use as a graphing, as a way of creating the graphs. The next thing is as I mentioned before, we need to be able to write to that file, so we use the W, and then I'm going to add in this new line equals, and that's just a blank string here for the new line is what it's going to use. Importantly, when you are finished with a file, you have to close it. So if you do F, which is our file, you do .close, and that will just close the file. Running this on its own, we should see that it runs and that test.csv file appears in your project. And this will work if you're using Microsoft Visual Studio Code as well. This test.csv, it's a CSV file, so I could open up in Excel, but it doesn't contain any data at all right now. So we'll do that part next. So I showed you the documentation, the CSV writer. We're actually going to create ourselves a writer and pass in the file that we want to write to. We have the file because it's F right here. So I'm going to call this writer, and I'm going to make it equal to, before we do anything further, it's important that we import the CSV library so we can use that. So I'm going to use CSV dot, and then just from the documentation, writer, and pass in F. That will open up a CSV writer so that we can actually write to it. The writer object is how we do this. So in this writer object, we can use the command, the method write, and this allows us to write a specific row. So I'm going to say write row. The write row takes a single row, which is a list, and inside that list, so I've put the square brackets for the list, we need the items that we want to write. So just for fun, I'm going to do this a little bit later, but I'll do I, and then I times 10. So we want to make sure that this actually works. So I'm going to put those inside of quote marks, so that they're actual strings. So just make sure I've got the correct quote marks here so that it closes. So I have the string I and the string I times 10 written into the CSV file right now. And if we quickly just run this, what you should see if you open up the CSV now, click on it, you should see that that row has been written in. So it does have a new line. If I was to use the write row function again, it would write to the next row. And you'll notice it put a comma, which is comma separated values, which is what CSV stands for. It puts a comma between each of the values, and one row for every single line. So that we know that works. Now the data that we put in is pretty rubbish, so I'm going to quickly create a for loop. So I'm going to say for I in range and then just use, I don't know, use 100 values. And then what we can do is we can use that CSV Writer again. So we'll use writer dot and we'll use write row. But this time what we'll pass in the row, in the list, will be the value of I. So that, remember, because it's a for loop, this will change every single time. And we'll do the value of I times 10. And these will just be written in to each of the row. When this for loop is done, it's 100 iterations, or it's got to I is 99. It will then close the file. So if we run this now, what we'll see if we look at the CSV is we get our header row, and then we get the value of I on the left-hand side, and then I times 10 on the right-hand side. This could be dropped straight into Excel, and it would give us, we'll be able to create a graph from that. Probably the easiest way to do that, rather than try and copy-paste the values, is just to download the file. So you hit the 3 dots, and that downloads that test.csv. And as long as you have Microsoft Excel on your computer, it will open it immediately in Microsoft Excel with all of the columns set up correctly. I'm just going to press Control A to select all of that, and then I'm going to create a graph from that. So with all of it selected, you just go to Insert, I think, and there's recommended charts, or you can choose a specific chart. If you choose recommended, it'll give you an idea of the ones that are most likely. And obviously, the better you are with Excel, the more likely you'll be able to get something useful out of this. And you want to make sure that it represents the data that you're trying to show. So by inserting this graph, I'll be able to snip this into my report and be able to write about why the graph looks the way that it looks.